Like it or hate it, the best way to play Tzeentch in multiplayer undoubtedly is to just take Kairos and try and snipe your opponent's characters with blue fire. Keeping that in mind, though, if you're playing against Tzeentch, you can sort of plan for that and try and take units and other things to counter it, potentially. Let's take a look at these builds here. Lenorm, the Tzeentch player, is already doing what he should. A lot of people are not going to like this, but if you're playing Tzeentch and you want to win, ultimately, this is the best, most efficient way to do so. So he's coming in here fat with Kairos. He's got a couple of Furies for screen, a couple of Screamers also for aerial, anti-large armor piercing. Got plenty of halberds on the ground for a similar effect, some marauders up front for meat shields, and plenty of marauder horsemen for tactical flexibility. Yeah, for the Bretonnian army here, this poor damsel of life has the unfortunate circumstance of not being mounted on a unicorn. The unicorns have heavy magic resistance on top of characters' innate missile resistance, could potentially shrug off quite a bit of this damage, and that mistake initially is going to cost the damsel pretty heavily. Lewin, of course, can have magic and missile resistance, very heavy with the Lion's shield active. Without it, he's just got the typical 15% missile resistance of a character, but given that he's a griffin, relatively small hitbox for a fast-flying monster, he can actually dodge some of the shots. That, combined with Lion's Shield, makes him, and the self-healing, of course, makes him a reasonably efficient unit for shrugging that damage off. For the rest of the Bretonnian army here, lots of Knights Errant, and quite wide with cheaper men-at-arms, field trebuchets as well. We've got 2 cheaper Grail relics. 2 is definitely one too many. 2 might be too many, to be honest, but hey, let's just go with it for the time being, and that's pretty much it. No archers, which again I think is a bit of a mistake. Even though they're vulnerable to getting dived on by Furies, they can act as bait. They are literally cheaper than Furies, so if you bait the Furies in and then countercharge them with some Knights, for example, like you're doing here with the trebuchets, you can actually just shut down the Furies, and yeah, archers are a less expensive bait unit than the trebuchets, and of course they're going to be great for shooting at the Screamers and at Kairos himself. Right now, Lewin, a little bit of a dangerous situation. He gets kind of surrounded here by the Screamers in the air. Of course, he has the mass to just chad straight through and run back to his own lines, but again, there's no archers here to set screen and shoot the Screamers out of the sky, so they can kind of just continue to chase him. To be honest, Lenorm, yeah, probably should just keep up the pressure here. Lewin's going to bravely try and get Kairos. Knights Errant also managed to find him on the ground. They are in the woods, which is going to help a little bit, but the Screamers still managed to mostly get a surround on Lewin. I don't know. We'll see how their attacks play out in a sustained fight against these Knights Errant. They should do pretty well since the Knights Errant didn't get a opportunity to get a counter charge, like a rear charge. They would have probably decimated the Screamers, but even still, with Stand Your Ground active, yeah, they should be able to shrug off some of that damage with Earthblood as well, so doing a great job of just surviving that engagement, trying to fall back away from those Marauder Horsemen. Meanwhile, Furies come in for another attack. Lenorm did a good job of not losing them in that initial foray, but now they are going to come in and start to try to shut down the trebuchets. I don't know, the trebuchet crews with their chevrons and the extra leadership might just hold out, but it does look like this one is going to get shut down. Tzeentchian infantry also coming into contact. The trebuchets have been doing a decent job whittling away the halberds here in the center, but they're finally going to get into contact with these men-at-arms here. Men-at-arms with shields, of course, got a little bit cheaper in the last patch. It definitely helps them trade more cost-effectively. I would say they're very cost-effective right now. I mean, they were already pretty decent before, but definitely something you should consider. I mean, why Bretonnian infantry forces to support their cavalry is kind of the MO, right? But here we see Kairos just continuing his bombardment from the sky because Bretonnia didn't really invest in too many flying units here, which definitely can be risky. And again, the lack of archers just means that these Screamers are basically having free reign here. And although the Furies have been finished off, of course, Kairos is also another fast flying unit that can tackle and keep his distance. He's somewhat vulnerable to archers at best. Archers are just kind of an annoyance to him. Honestly, he can just fly away, replenish his barrier, or self-heal straight up. Here we're going to see a really nice combination for a total of minus 40 armor on King Lewin, plus an extra 10% weakness to fire. Kairos goes for a very brave dive here. Kairos combat stats, sustained combat stats are like minus 21, 25 on attack and defense versus Lewin. That is absolutely nuts, so he definitely wants to avoid a straight fight against Lewin. As Lewin starts to replenish even a little bit of his HP in the air, he's going to be very dangerous to Kairos, though. Lenorm doing a good job of just keeping the dreaded double-headed big bird away, unleashing another sinful blue fire there. Some volleys also from the Marauder Horseman. He's done a decent job of preserving ammunition here, so he can kind of kite away as a lot of these Tzeentchian infantry start to die out. Lewin will also dive in to support his knights here. They're going to charge in, charge out, try and utilize that lance formation to good effect. Lance formation will decrease their melee defense, but the extra mass is pretty important when you're charging heavy halberd units like these. Tzeentch warriors are getting ground down. I don't know how well they're actually doing. I guess we'll see some of their value after the fact. But it does appear that maybe one unit is doing okay over on this side, but most of the rest of them are just getting very well worn down. These Knights Errant and Questing Knights actually mixed in here for some great AP. In Lance formation to give them extra mass and charge. Can just clip the wings of this formation here. Most of the unit models manage to pull through. They're going to not be super vulnerable to the halberds in this situation, especially if the Bretonnian player keeps them moving here. It looks like they might be coming back for some more, but the extra mass, especially against the very tattered, low model unit, you know, once most of the models have died for these warriors, they're just going to get thrown around like crazy without anyone back them up. So Screamers are still fighting, though. Again, come back to the archers. Like, one of those trebuchets probably could have been converted into a couple of archers. With the chevrons, I forget how much they are. What are they, 650 base? So maybe not quite 2 archers, but you could change around some funds, maybe cut a couple of the shields to afford the extra second archer, but I think that would go a long way as compared to the 1 trebuchet. Still, though, Bretonnia's knights and infantry have done a very good job of holding out. It's just the character situation, Kairos sort of decisively deciding that part of the battle himself. Decisively deciding. How's that for, anyway? Yeah, it's just tough. I mean, Lewin doesn't have a prayer of catching him. Without the caster either, I mean, that's a pretty good amount of value just lost straight up without contributing anything to the battlefield. I mean, maybe we saw a couple of Earthbloods there in that early phase before the caster completely died out, but it's definitely tough. Here, the Tzeentch Cavalry are going to do a great job just kiting out these Knights Errant. You definitely would want to pull them back, and again, come back to archers being great against enemy light skirmish cavalry, just providing a screen against them, not allowing them to just skirmish you all day long, right? As long as you stick close to your archers, the archers can respond in kind. But here, Lewin trying his best. He's got Stand Your Ground active. Doesn't look like Lion Shield is available. He takes another volley from Kairos there. Might be taking a rear charge as well. The Screamers, Norm has been doing a great job of keeping his flying units alive. Screamers in particular, I mean, like Furies, they are extremely flimsy and they can die super fast if you misuse them. Here, they're going to get countercharged by the Questing Knights on the ground, and that's probably it for them. But they've done enough, and value-wise, they did manage to pay for themselves, both units, I believe. So that is pretty good. They're done at this point, but they've certainly done their jobs. Kairos can now do some nice, excuse me, poisoning of my throat, no. Casting that blue fire across targets on the battlefield here, not having to focus on characters so much. It is by far and away the best magic missile in the game, and it is something that really defines Tzeentch's playstyle. I don't know if they'll ever nerf it. I have little faith, but yeah, I do think that if they were to nerf it, it would significantly alter Tzeentch's playstyle and open up a lot of new and interesting opportunities to see some things that maybe we wouldn't see otherwise. I do think it's a little bit cheesy, but again, if you want to win and you're playing Tzeentch, this is definitely the best way to do it, so can't criticize the Norm for doing the thing that he should be doing to win, you know? Hard to argue with that. It's more on CA for designing the game in such a way. I mean, it makes sense that Tzeentch's magic would be the thing that defines their playstyle. I mean, I'm not arguing with that, but maybe that specific spell just needs to be tuned down a little bit more so that some of those other spells can shine. Very interesting. Yeah, Bretonnia doing their best to kind of hold out here, but the Marauder Horsemen at this point can do a great job of chasing some routing units, finishing off the Trebuchet crew so they don't come back, finishing off these Knights as well, doing a nice multi-charge here on the Spearmen-at-Arms. All the while, Kairos, there's not really a lot of mass, especially once these Knights are gone. There's nothing to oppose him just swooping in and continuously cycle charging these infantry to terror rout them. I mean, I guess there are these 2 Grail Relics in here, which will technically prevent the terror aspect of it, but they're pretty terrible combatants. I don't know, actually. Compared to... yeah. Who cares? I still would like for Creative Assembly to give the Grail Relic a full overhaul, maybe someday in the future, but as it is, again, the Bretonnian build just has a key flaw and not any archers at all. Even if you end up losing them, peasant archers are still just such a key unit to have against so many factions, especially a faction like Tzeentch that has some kind of tricky play styles potentially. A lot of light armor units, though, where the archers can shine against. Helps kind of get through that barrier initially as well. And here, I think it would have helped to limit these Screamers, both of which performed very well. I will say, though, this Halberds, this Bretonnian player here, Saurus Warriors, did a great job of limiting the Halberds. The only one managed to pay for itself. It did get quite a bit of value. Kairos, of course, was the deciding factor. The Tzeentch Horsemen, mostly pretty good. I mean, mostly unopposed. They took some damage in the end, but all tactically did what they needed to. So I kind of see these, and I look at this, and I see that the archers would have, even if they didn't, you know, hard counter the units that performed well, they would have definitely helped. And the trebuchets, I think, a little bit of an overinvestment. You could definitely cut the one, especially with the 3 chevrons, and we'll check the cost on that in just a minute here. And that would definitely benefit you greatly. The Knights Errant generally do a really good job. I like them, very cost-effective in this matchup, especially if you're using them well, which Saurus Warriors definitely was there, using that Lance Formation and Cycle Charging to good effect. But let's go ahead and take a look here and just see if I go Skirmish versus AI, and we drop in some Bretonnia. Yeah, so the Trebuchet with some chevrons, 650 base, up to rank 3 is 742. So it's not quite the same cost as 2 archers. Again, you'd maybe have to cut shields from a couple of the men-at-arms down to get the extra 100, and you would, or 50 or whatever. Not quite 50. But, yeah, I guess that would literally just be 2 shields for the extra 100. And get 2 archers, and I think even a small subtle change like that might be enough. You could also cut one of the Grail Relics as well, maybe cut one of the Grail Relics, cut that 1 Trebuchet, and maybe even take a couple of Poison Archers to help slow the Tzeentchian units down and also debuff their weapon strength. That Poison is a nice way to kind of equalize the fight out a little bit against some of those units that are taking Warp Flame into the battle. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.